In the past, Rockstar has promised us a number of different updates that were supposed to be coming to Red Dead Online, but I'm here to tell you today that most of them are either dead or they've been molded to fit other content. So today we are looking at updates that Rockstar have most likely killed off. Before we do get into the video though, I want to let you know about a project that I've been working on. It's no secret that I've created a lot of gaming channels, and because I've created so many, I know how to get them partnered in about 1 to 2 months without needing to promote them on other social media accounts. And I always get asked, how do I do it? That's why I've created an in-depth class on Skillshare. It goes through the basics of creating a new YouTube channel, but it quickly scales up into doing keyword research, planning videos, recording, editing, creating thumbnails, and eventually getting monetized, where you can actually start running your YouTube channel like a business by outsourcing the work. If you're interested in having your own gaming channel, then there is a link in the description down below, as well as you can find it as the pinned comment, and that will give you a free month of Skillshare where you can use that time to watch through my class, and at the end of it, you will understand everything that you need to know. So link to everything can be found in the description down below. Getting back into the video, there are a number of different reasons to cut content. Reasons such as it's not fun, maybe it's overscoped, maybe it fits better with other content, or it could be a change within business. There's in fact thousands and probably even millions of different reasons to get rid of content, and you'll be surprised that most games end up cutting the majority of their content, and what is left is only the best of it. Rockstar Games is no different. They do the exact same thing with Red Dead as well as GTA. A perfect example of this is the Diamond Casino Resort for GTA Online. This originally was supposed to be part of single player DLC, but because of a business change, they decided it would be better to make it online content. But when they brought it to online content, they had issues of bringing in currency and actually having it gambling within the game. This ended up being an update which was scheduled to release way before as something completely different, but because of business changes and then other types of changes with law which they had to change the content and mold it around, it turned out to be something completely different. And with the content that we're talking about here, strictly for Red Dead Online, it's likely it's going to be the exact same thing, or it's going to be completely killed off. So the first one to mention, and something that's been brought up quite recently, is Posse collector sets. This was first mentioned in February of 2020 after the release of the Moonshine update, and the idea was to talk about the success as well as the failures of the Moonshine update, plus also talk about the future and what content will be coming. In one paragraph they say this: "We would love to keep on adding new collections and additional variety to collector gameplay, eventually adding a next step, much in the same way that the Moonshiner is the evolution of the trader. One idea we really want to explore is the idea of Posse members each finding a distinctly different part of an item. When brought together, forms the collectible you can log within your collection." Now with this paragraph, some of the content has already come through. We have already had new collection sets. This was part of the fossils. And I wouldn't be surprised that we see more collection sets within the future because it is easily scalable. We've also technically seen the stage 2 to the collector, as the naturalist has very similar gameplay mechanics of where you would have to find different animal samples and you'll store them within your animal field book. But we haven't had any Posse collections, and it's likely because it has been now 2 years that we're probably not going to get it, not in a way in which it was first spoken about here. Rockstar have said before in the past that they work around 1 year in advance, and I don't need to tell you that 2 years is way longer than 1 year. So if this was initially part of their plan of that next 1 year, well, it's long gone and past. This original content is probably now completely killed off to never be used again, or the other possibility is that it's being reused and molded to fit other type of content. Now it's a shame no matter which way you go, because the collector is the role which does still pay out the most amount of money. The issue is that it is incredibly boring. You're literally playing a walking simulator as you copy the Jean Road collector map and go point to point to find collectible items. Having something that would really spice this content up would make things a hell of a lot better, and I think Posse collection sets was something that players were looking forward to. The next content mostly killed off or within the terms of what was mentioned within this interview, and it is the same interview, is properties and communal spaces. It did say that property owners have more to look forward to as well. Some of the roles would let us introduce more feature-rich businesses and even communal spaces that players can gather and meet up socially, lone wolves and full posses, maybe even let each player own part of such a space. Very similar to our previous point, this was mentioned 2 years ago and still to this day, nothing has happened. We haven't had any new properties added to the game, no communal spaces. And as the previous point, as Rockstar does normally work around 1 year in advance, it's likely that this content has changed from when this interview took place. It's not going to be what they actually advertised in this paragraph. It's going to be something completely different. I do want to say that it probably hasn't been killed off because properties, especially within an open world game like this, and the demand for properties, that it's likely to happen at some point. Very similar to when Red Dead Online was first released and everyone started saying that we want properties. Rockstar said properties will come at some point. It just took some time for this to actually happen. It wasn't until a year later, once we had the Moonshine update. And what adds to this content being delayed, changing, or being completely killed off is when Rockstar did mention properties quite some time ago. This was after the Frontier Pursuits update. They did say this: we want to introduce properties at some point in the future. Again, part of the reason we don't jump into the Shark Tank too soon, we want players to live like an outlaw, live in the Wild West. We don't want to abandon a camp. We want the camp to be something that you can take care of, and we want the expansion to update it. And you can get your own distinct feel. It's your own camp. This is my camp. It's their camp. We don't want to leave that behind too quickly. And upon saying this, it was 2 months later when the Moonshine update was released and we did get our first property. But some players are still holding on to this Polygon interview, which was 2 years ago, and we still haven't had anything from it. The next thing that has been killed off is a whole role dedicated to photography. In a VG 24/7 interview back in 2019 after the Frontier Pursuits update, they did say this: another potential area Rockstar could expand on with a future role is photography, which is something we'd love to do. I'm told if done right, this is something I'm even more excited about than lawmen versus outlaws. I can already imagine packing warm clothes, trekking into the mountains, and attempting to get a perfect shot of a grazing moose. Maybe we could get more money for better compositions, or depending on what's happening in the photos. I imagine a system similar to Dead Rising, but like 100% more chill. Now with this content, some were looking forward to this, others really didn't care too much. I really didn't care too much with photography, but each to their own. But with this content, it hasn't really been killed off. It's just now it's not a full role dedicated to photography. It's now what has changed to that naturalist content. The naturalist was released in 2020 and it did bring in a photography component where you can look at different types of animals, and there is an animal field book and you have different tasks for each animal. If you want to 100% it, then it does involve you taking pictures of each animal. But it isn't essential to the role. It's just an extra task on top if it is something that you're looking to do. Alongside this, there was also free roam events where you would take pictures of animals and you would then compete against other players, and this is the furthest that they've gone with photography. It's unlikely that we'll ever get a whole role dedicated just to photography because it is such a niche component of the game, especially considering there is a bigger part of the community which want the Rockstar editor, and this far outweighs the need for a photography role. The Rockstar editor would be able to do everything that you could do within the photography role and a lot more. The next lot of content which is either killed off or most likely for this situation it's actually just had to be changed to fit other type of content is the lawman versus villain system. Now in the exact same interview that we just mentioned, the VG 24/7 back in 2019, they did say this: utilizing the bounty system and the honor system and tying that with our roles in the future where the player can be a villain, could join a gang, you know, or decide to take the side of a lawman. If we did something like that. Every time we get close to a new content drop, everyone talks about a potential new lawman role, which is the next step to the bounty hunter role. But if players aren't talking about the lawman, they've always been talking about there being a dishonorable role where you can actually link it to the bounty hunter role that's already within the game. And even though it would be a cool way to go about things, at this stage I just don't think it's going to happen, not in the way in which it was mentioned back here. I think the lawman is completely dead. There is still an honorable and dishonorable system, and that will link into future content. The only way that they've tied the honor system to gameplay mechanics since this article first came out back in 2019 was there being player bounties. If you get your bounty high enough, it will actually send out a message to nearby players, and if they accept, they can track and hunt you down. And I think if that's the only type of content that we've had in the last couple of years that fits this description, I really don't think we're going to stretch all the way to a lawman or even a villain. In fact, I do believe that this idea of a lawman role ended up just being part of what was the prestigious bounty hunter. The content that was initially spoken about here got changed to fit within that prestigious bounty hunter rather than it going into anything completely separate. At this stage, I really don't think we're going to get a lawman role, but I do still believe that the honor system is still going to be involved. You will still be able to get honor for doing certain activities within future content, whether it be you being more dishonorable or honorable. That will never change, but I don't think it's going to fit to what they said here, where you could potentially join a gang, because I think they'll just keep that as your own posses to eventually also being a lawman where you can hunt down these different villains. And the last thing to talk about is expanding to a fishing role. This I just don't think is going to happen. It's actually been mentioned quite a few different times in a number of different articles, but the most recent one was within Oz Gamer, and this was just before the release of the prestigious bounty hunter. So that is about a year and 4 months ago at the time of recording this video. In this interview, Scott Butchert was asked about what type of content they would like to see within the future, and he mentions a bit of everything. He talks about collections, he talks about bounty hunting, and then also finding collections whilst bounty hunting, but also said he would love the idea to expand fishing within the game. Very similar to what they did with hunting and expanded it within roles such as the trader and eventually the naturalist. And don't get me wrong, I think this idea will always be on a table, but it's just because it's easy. 90% of the content for you to have a very good in-depth fishing role is already within the game. You can already fish within the game. Go to any location, pull out your fishing rod, and fish will spawn in. You already got the gameplay mechanics to get any type of canoe, plus on top of that you can get any of the boats outside of Saint Denis. You swim over to him and you can interact with them and end up sailing those boats. Really, this role just needs there to be a role icon within the menus where you can actually see your rank unlocks and your different types of unlocks that you can use with those unlock tokens. But because that is the only thing that it needs, considering this was mentioned a year and a half ago and still nothing has happened, it's unlikely that this will be content that we'll see over the next year or two. Now, the cool thing that we've all just mentioned is that it could be very similar to the casino heist that we mentioned right at the beginning. As things currently stand, with all this content that we just mentioned, I really just don't think it's going to happen. I think the time is stacked against it for when it was first mentioned and the scope of what needs to be done. The fact that it hasn't been done in that time, I just don't think we're going to get it anytime soon. But whenever players anticipate a new update coming, or they're trying to use what Rockstar said before in the past against Rockstar, they always reference back to these points. And unfortunately, it just doesn't appear that these are in development anymore. This content has either been completely killed off or it's been broken down into other gameplay features which has been molded to fit other updates. But anyway guys, here are just a couple updates which I believe have been completely killed off. If you do have any questions about anything, then please feel free to leave them within a comment section down below. But anyway guys, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. But for now, I'm going to see ya.